In his final days, accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein tried contacting Larry Nasser, the former U.S. gymnastics team doctor convicted of abusing scores of athletes. And it's just one of the revelations in the more than 4,000 pages of documents obtained by the Associated Press. Those records detail the days leading up to Epstein's August 2019 suicide in jail and what happened afterward. So joining us now, one of the reporters who got their hands on those records, Associated Press reporter Michael Sizek. Michael, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this. How were you able to get your hands on these documents? It's now been almost 4 years since Epstein's suicide.
Yeah, it's been a long wait. We at the Associated Press filed a Freedom of Information Act request, like a lot of journalists do, and then we waited. We asked the Bureau of Prisons, which runs the federal jail that housed Jeffrey Epstein. We asked for all of their records regarding his detention and his death, and then the aftermath. And what we saw in these pages, these 4,000 pages of documents, were logs about his detention in the special housing unit, is what they call it, his earlier attempt on July 23rd to take his own life, and then the chaotic response when he was found dead in his cell on August 10th.
All right, I want to talk to you a little bit about the response in just a moment. But first, I mean, you hear the name Jeffrey Epstein immediately. I mean, there were countless conspiracy theories, right, surrounding his death. But these documents, these 4,000 pages, really dispel a lot of those theories. What are some of the most noteworthy takeaways to you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, first of all, if you look at the pages that we received, there is really no reference or even credence given to those theories. You have a collection of documents that show employees cutting corners, improper training, previous attempt at suicide, and concern among the prison staff, that the jail staff, that Jeffrey Epstein could harm himself. They had him on suicide watch for about 31 hours after that first attempt. At the same time, Jeffrey Epstein was insisting that he was not suicidal. And so you have this, there are several reports in here. There's an after action sort of reconstruction of what happened. And the takeaway, having covered this agency for years now, is that this was a massive failing. And because of the high profile nature of Jeffrey Epstein, that's one of the reasons we really know so much about what is going on now inside this agency.
Well, Michael, one of the biggest bombshells, and we mentioned this in the intro here, that letter that Epstein tried sending to disgraced Dr. Larry Nasser. What do we know about that letter?
Yeah, these documents were really a window into Jeffrey Epstein's behavior in those 36 days that he was in jail. And one of the things that really stood out was exchange of emails between an investigator and a prison lawyer who worked for the Bureau of Prisons, in which the investigator says he found in the mailroom at the jail, some weeks after Jeffrey Epstein's death, this letter that he sent to Larry Nasser, the disgraced doctor from the U.S. gymnastics team. That letter was returned to sender, was never apparently delivered to Larry Nasser, and the letter itself was not in the collection of documents that we received, but it was still definitely stood out, was a flat red flag to us as we were reporting this, that these two high-profile people who were accused, and in Nasser's case, convicted of abusing women, young women and girls, were tied by this attempt at communication.
All right, so Michael, one thing in those documents, I want to make sure I quote you correctly. Cutting corners, improper training. We know that the two guards stationed outside of his cell were charged with falsifying records to make it appear that they had conducted the required checks they were supposed to be conducting. Do you think your new reporting could eventually lead to more consequences for either those guards or maybe others linked to Epstein's death?
It seems like that part of it is put to rest, that those officers, those guards, have reached a deal where they will cooperate with the ongoing Inspector General's investigation into this matter. But the takeaway definitely is that the Bureau of Prisons, this was a wake-up call for the agency. There are many people in this in the custody of the federal prison system who are not of the high profile of Jeffrey Epstein, who do not have the resources and do not draw the media attention. And there have been protocols in place. Whether they are followed or not remains to be seen. And that's why we're here reporting on this agency, and the watchdogs that we talk to, the people who are incarcerated, attorneys, et cetera, still need to remain vigilant. This was an inflection point for the federal prison system, but it certainly was not something where everything is fixed because this has exposed all of these problems.
Well, excellent work. Associated Press reporter Michael Cizik, thank you so much for your time and for your reporting.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.